Okay, the book that I'm going to be sharing today is called In My Mama's Kitchen by Jardine Nolan. And it's a beautiful story. It is realistic fiction. And I want you to listen carefully to figure out who is telling the story. The summary basically is it's about a little girl, and there she is. And she's remembering happy moments that she has experienced within her mother's kitchen. And some of them have been special occasions, and other times just ordinary everyday events. As you're listening, I also want you to pay attention to some of the text features because it's a regular trade book. It's a storybook with pictures. However, it's kind of set up, the structure is kind of set up where it has headings for each one of the episodes within the story. And in addition to that, I want you to notice through the characters' feelings you can get it like by looking at the illustrations from it within the text. The artist did a great job conveying emotions. And I want you to watch out for that and listen to the dialogue and the actions that you can almost imagine making a picture walk while you're listening to the story. And I think it's one that you'll be able to make a lot of connections to and relate to. So here we go. First in line. And there's that title that I was talking about for every time they talk about something new. Seems like everything good that happens in my house happens in Mama's kitchen. Like the day Nadine burst in waving a letter over her head. I got it, she yelled. I got it. What? I shouted back. What did you get? Nadine held the letter over her heart and closed her eyes. She read the whole thing without even looking at it. Dear Miss Jeffries, I am pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to our university on a 4-year music scholarship. We did a dance around Nadine. Mama and Daddy hugged each other real tight. Then Nadine got out her clarinet and played Daddy's favorite song, This Little Light of Mine. Daddy sang a made-up song about Nadine being the first person in our family to go to college. This little daughter of mine, first in the family line, this little daughter of mine, she's made it to college time. This little daughter of mine, first to be in line, going to college, see her shine. I felt so proud. I stood on a chair and saluted her. There she is. Look at the picture that's conveying emotions. And there's the hugging, proud parents. The wedding. My friend Naomi made all the plans. We held Emma's wedding in the sunniest part of Mama's kitchen right under the window. We marched her down the aisle between Mama's African violets. Jannie was supposed to be the groom, but she squirmed and meowed and wiggled out of her wedding clothes. Then she hid behind the stove. We had the reception anyway. Tea cakes and ice-cold buttermilk. The groom came back when she saw the buttermilk. Right there. Talking pots. Pots can't really talk, so they're personified in the title. On the Saturday Mama and her sisters do Talking Pots Day, I stay close by. Aunt Katie, Aunt Gloria, and Aunt Ludi always arrive together. Each one is carrying her biggest stewing pot in one arm and shopping bags in the other. The bags Aunt Ludi carries are full of vegetables. Aunt Gloria's bags are filled with meats and sausages and always one odd-shaped package on top. We all know what's inside it. The biggest soup bone in town. Aunt Katie's bags hold extra cutting boards, knives, vegetable peelers, bowls, and spoons. She pulls them out. Then she holds up Gran Lee's metal coffee pot. I'll make the coffee. In moments, every hand is busy. Nadine and Mama are washing vegetables when Mama begins to hum a melody that has no words. Then Aunt Ludi joins her in deep, low tones. Aunt Katie and Aunt Gloria chime in with high-pitched harmony. The air is full of humming. Their hands are flying. I think they cook like hummingbirds. That's, of course, a simile. Just as easy as the music started, it turns to talk. Remember the time you told me the insides of the human body smelled like fresh pineapple? Aunt Ludi asked as carrot peelings fly into her bag. I got laughed right out of the 7th grade science class that day. Remember how Mama always bragged about the way I chop onions? Says Aunt Gloria as her knife cut chunks on the cutting board. That's like onomatopoeia because it's words that make sounds. Always minced so nice and fine and never a tear, she sighed, shaking her head. How about the time you made my Easter dress on the sewing machine, Nell? Aunt Katie, seeding tomatoes, says to Mama. Not one of you had the heart to tell me that my hem was 4 inches longer in the back than it was in the front. I couldn't figure out why Reverend Taylor looked at me so funny when he shook my hand. So obviously they're in church or someplace like that, a place of worship. All day, the kitchen is busy and full and cozy. Even the African violets are blooming, just like my aunts. There's another simile. Can you find it? Great Aunt Caroline. When Great Aunt Caroline came to spend her 95th birthday with us, Daddy was glad. I wasn't. Why do we always have to be so quiet around Great Aunt Caroline? I asked Mama. She's very old, Mama said. That didn't seem like a very good reason to me. Great Aunt Caroline wasn't used to cats, so Jannie had to sleep in the basement. Great Aunt Caroline wasn't used to children underfoot, so Naomi couldn't come over. Underfoot means that you're kind of in the way. And Great Aunt Caroline always sat in my chair and called it her chair. She was still sitting there while I cleared the table one morning. Henry, her walking stick, rested on her lap. I figured she was watching to make sure I did a good job, but by the time I had finished, her eyes were closed. She sat completely still. It didn't even look like she was even breathing. Had she died? I held my own breath as I leaned over to look in her face. Suddenly, she opened one eye just like Jannie. Boo! She shouted. Gotcha! I made you look. Ha 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 ha! And there's the Henry the walking stick. So she has it named. So that's certainly personified. Personification. So we're still with Aunt Caroline. Later, when we went out for a walk, she called me her walking out to the backyard friend. The next one is called Jannie's apples. Every October, Mama makes crabapple jelly. I wash the apples, Nadine peels them, Mama cooks them, and we all fill the jars. It gets pretty busy, so usually Jannie hides behind the stove. Usually, but not this time. This time, she marched into the middle of the kitchen and jumped on top of a basket of apples. Mama shooed her, but she wouldn't get down. I put her on the floor, but she jumped right back up and rolled around. Shoo, Jannie, I scolded. She batted an apple, then another and another. I think she thought the apples were mice. Just as I reached down to pick her up again, she batted one mouse too many. The basket fell over and the apples came crashing down around her. Apples rolled all over the floor. I tripped and fell right on top of Jannie. Jannie howled. Mama dropped a pot of water. Nadine screamed and grabbed for a mop. But then Jannie was frantic. By then, Jannie was frantic. She ran around the kitchen, but she kept running into apple baskets. She knocked every single one over. Then she slid through the puddle of water and crashed into the wall. Just then, we heard Daddy at the door. Jannie scrambled to her feet, let out a wild meow, and flew outside right between his legs. He stared after her. Then he stared at the mess in the kitchen. Finally, he looked at the three of us Cat got everyone's tongue, he asked. And we all burst out laughing. And it really is funny because that's an idiom. It means you usually use that when you want to know why nobody is saying anything. Corn pudding time. Most of the time we say the kitchen is Mama's. But when Daddy makes corn pudding, it belongs just to him. At the first crackle of the falling leaves, he announces, "It's getting to be corn pudding time." As soon as the first frost covers the ground, he rubs his hands together and sniffs the air. Mmm, he says. I can almost smell that corn pudding cooking up right now. By the time the pumpkins have all become sagging jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkin pies, Daddy has taken over the kitchen. Watching Daddy make the corn pudding is a lot better than actually eating it. While he turns the handle of Mama's old-fashioned egg beater, he sings La Cucaracha and dances the cha-cha. Oh, look at the emotions again in those illustrations in the old stove. While he sifts and stirs, measures and mixes, pours and pinches, he sings and dances a tango right across the kitchen floor. Mmm, he says as he slides the corn pudding into the oven. This is going to be the best one yet. Then he picks me up and we twirl and swirl around the room. Corn pudding has never been a favorite dessert of mine, but when Daddy presents it at the dinner table wearing that smile of his and humming Glory Hallelujah, having to eat it is worth it. This episode is called Winter and Gran Lee. So listen to see if you can figure out what Gran Lee is or who Gran Lee is. In winter, when I come home from school, the warm kitchen fogs the windows. I hug Mama from behind and she says, "Hello, sweet potato pie. How was school today?" Then she drops a taste of peach cobbler into my mouth and peach juice dribbles down my chin. "Stand close to Gran Lee and warm the shivers off," she tells me. Then we talk about my day while she stirs a pot of greens, turns the frying chicken, and mixes a bowl of cornbread batter. Chum, 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 chum. Mama's wooden spoon scrapes against the bowl. But before she can put the cornbread into the oven, she jiggles and shakes the door handle. "I don't think I'll remind Daddy that this handle is still broken," she says to me. I smile. Gran Lee was Mama's stove, and she doesn't want a new one. Neither do I. So it's really winter and that special stove. Nighttime serenades. Sometimes in the middle of the night I wake up. When the house is dark and quiet, I can count the ticks of the clock. 493, 494. I go into the kitchen for something to eat. Sometimes Daddy and Jannie are already there. We sit and snack together on whatever we like. Sometimes we make sandwiches out of leftovers and have ice cream and cookies. We giggle and munch and try not to wake the others. We talk in whispers and make big gestures, but Daddy isn't all that good at being quiet. Clang, bang, a lid falls on the floor. Soon Mama and Nadine are in the kitchen too, and Daddy doesn't have to whisper anymore. "Now that we're all here, how about a story?" Daddy asks. Then he starts the way he always starts. "When I was a little boy down on the farm..." After the story come songs. Daddy calls them serenades for sleepless nights. We sit around the table talking and singing and laughing, just like that's what everybody does in the middle of the night. And when I finally start to yawn, I know for sure that everything good that happens in my house happens in my Mama's kitchen. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. Think about the connections that you were able to make while you were listening to some of those stories. Maybe you have some familiar stories that you would like to share about what happens in your Mama's kitchen.